In the year 2016, I lived alone and regularly fell asleep on my small sofa in the den. No blanket or sheet, just a scratchy pillow to lay my head on. Early one morning after sleeping on the couch, I slowly wake up, and it's just now getting to be light. And I'm very groggy, but I open up my eyes, and I can feel something strange. I'm on a clean sheet, and I have a clean sheet over me as well as a heavier bed cover. Instead of being crammed on the sofa, I'm on my side and I can feel 12 to 16 inches of bed before hitting the edge in front of me behind my back instead of the back sofa. It's open a little, but I can hear somebody right there breathing right next to me, and it makes me open my eyes fully, and my eyes adjust to the dimly lit early morning room. There beside me is a nightstand, a door on the wall where my head is pointed. On the opposite wall, an open door going to a bathroom, and it's my bathroom from the 1990s. The bathroom in my bedroom, in a house that I haven't lived in since 2001. As my mind is trying to grasp all of this, I feel this person behind me stirring around the bed. I haven't moved yet, but I'm aware it's likely my ex-wife, deducing it's the 1990s version of my ex-wife. I get chills and panic a little, not wanting to find out. I rub the sleep out of my eyes, and before you know it, I'm back in 2016, on my sofa with no covers. But it was all so vivid and also real. I don't know how, but I feel like I jumped back in time and was in bed with my ex-wife again. As scary as that might be, but I'm almost sure that's what happened. It was the middle of the night as I got up to go pee, and it was dark. Afterwards, I exited the restroom and saw the silhouette of my wonderful cat gracefully walking around the corner towards me. As I reached down to pet him, his image disappeared completely from my eyes. I didn't blink either, contrary to my title post. My eyes were open as I saw this. He literally was there. My hand was 6 inches away from him, from trying to pet him, and then he wasn't. Like somebody had just clicked the button and pressed delete. Just gone. He didn't fade, he just kind of blipped out of existence. I stood up from my bent over position wondering what just happened, and then I saw him walk around the corner again to greet me, in the exact same way. His silhouette looked exactly the same as before in the darkness. I then bent down to pet him. I scratched him for a bit and headed back to bed, and told my girlfriend about it later, and she seemed perplexed. I know it sounds super cliche because of the black cat in the actual Matrix movie, but I'm convinced cats can teleport interdimensionally and through time, and that maybe I was more susceptible to the perception of this cat's fluid interdimensional nature in my half-asleep state. I'm not really sure, but that's just a theory that I have. I'm wondering what your theories are. This took place about 1.5 years ago, before the lockdown started, when my mom and I were going to go pick up my grandma from a friend's house. I was 16 at the time, and in my country, the minimum driving age is 18 years old, so I was driving illegally. Anyways, when we were going back, I had a flash, a vision, I guess you would say, of a police officer stopping our car and telling me to come out. This vision was very vivid and only lasted about 3 seconds, but it felt like I was there, like I lived the experience. In that one instance, in those 3 seconds, I saw everything. And then I came back to this reality. And after that, I immediately stopped, and I asked my mom to switch with me because I didn't feel comfortable driving after that. I told her about the vision. She thought I was crazy, but I wanted to switch anyways, and me being under the age of 18, she wasn't too hesitant and too unwilling to do that. So anyways, we continued on the trip, and we approached the place where I had the vision, exactly where the police should have been, exactly what I imagined. And sure enough, there was a cop there. I'd never seen police there before, but I did that time. And so I'm thinking, was this some kind of a glitch, or perhaps some kind of a vision of the future? Maybe both. A little bit of a backstory. So this took place in the year 2017, and I was living with my partner at the time. We used to have a royal python. During this time, she was still quite young and small. We would sometimes put a towel in the bathtub and put her stuff in there so she could roam around and have some extra space while unattended. We made sure that she was safe when we did this. On this particular night, though, we had a friend over to our house, and we did the usual towel in the bathtub thing and let her just chill there. 20 or 30 minutes went by, so I went to go check on her. The bathroom was only maybe 7 feet from our bedroom, so it was always a quick trip back. I walked into the bathroom, and I see her behind the toilet. I suffer from severe arthritis, so it was hard for me to bend down to pick her up. I went back into our room to ask my partner for help. When he got up, he asked our friend what time it was, and he showed us the phone saying that it was 10:53. We walk into the bathroom together. He picks up the snake and we walk back to our room. When we get back, our friend says something along the lines of, "Where'd you go?" My partner slightly lifts up the snake to display her and says, "I had to get Doris." Our friend then says, "For an hour?" And both of us just kind of stand there confused. Our friend lifts his phone and once again it says it's 11:47. We were somehow gone for like 54 minutes or something like that, and we have no way to rationalize how that happened. Again, our friend was only about 7 feet away from the bathroom. We did close the door when we went in because the toilet was behind the door, and you have to be all the way in to close it. So in what felt like 15 seconds at the most was apparently 54 minutes. So basically an hour. Our friend swears on his life we were gone for about an hour, but where on earth did we go? And what happened all the time? How did this even happen? I decided to go out of town for a week and drove to Philadelphia from the state of Illinois. I had to drive halfway home in Indiana because of the rain, and I wasn't about to drive through that at night up the I-65 corridor. So I'm heading home yesterday and I observed the second to last exit on I-80, right before my own exit. Almost home, same as always. A few minutes later though, I noticed a tall electrical pylon along the south side of the interstate, and then it hit me. I must have missed my own exit somehow, but I didn't just miss it, I traveled about 7 miles past it before noticing. Luckily, the next exit was 1 mile ahead, so I turned around right away. The weirdest thing about this whole situation is how I seemingly went from the penultimate exit before mine to the exit after mine in what appeared to be 2 minutes. Never even saw my exit, never even saw the gigantic water tower. I have been through here hundreds of times in the past 14 years, and I can't believe how I missed everything. I'm still a little bit freaked out about it. I was mildly aggressive because I had hot food in the car, but I wasn't hallucinating or anything like that. There's no way that I could have missed that exit. I just find it kind of impossible. Okay, so this just happened, and I'm feeling a bit crazy about this, but I don't know if I really am, or I don't know what to think, to be honest with you. I live in upstate New York, near Catskills, so if anybody else experienced this, I would like to know. And just for the record, I'm not under any kind of influence on anything, any kinds of medications, or sleep deprived, and I wasn't at that time either. I'm in charge of letting the dogs out in the middle of the night. I don't know why the dogs always come out to me, but they do, so I'm just up and I let them out, and then I let them in when they're done. I've had dogs my whole life, so I'm accustomed to regular sleep interruptions because of them. When I let the dogs out, I pass the clock on the stove. I usually look at the time to get a sense of how long I have left to sleep, but also I want to know how long the dogs have been out. Sometimes I just wing it with the time, but not this time. My partner and I agreed that we would probably fall asleep around 10 or 10:30. The last activity on my phone was around 9 o'clock, so it was at least that late. We let the dogs out just before bed, and then the dogs usually only go out once or twice during the night. Well, anyways, tonight I let them out for the first time, and I don't remember the time exactly, but I assume that it was around 1 or 2 o'clock, as this is usually the time for them. The second time, however, I looked up at the clock and it was 4:09. I remember this because I thought, that's weird. The dogs usually never need to go out at 4. It's usually around 5 or closer to 7 when we're waking up. And I let them back in like at 4:14 or something like that, and just went back to bed. Then I was awoken again by the dogs. I considered ignoring them because I assumed that my alarm would be going off very soon and that I would be up to let them out. But the littlest one seemed very sincere that he had to go out and couldn't wait, so I got up and I let him out. Then I looked at the clock, expecting the clock to be closer to 7, but it wasn't. As I stared at the clock, it was only 2:36 a.m., and I thought at first maybe that I was crazy, but when I went back to bed, I lay down and my partner unlocked his phone and checked the time, and it was 2:30. That's it. I thought it would be way later than that because I thought I'd let the dogs out at 4. I don't have any concrete evidence to prove anything other than just my version of the events, and that's it. I wish I did though, because this is kind of freaky and I don't know what happened to that missing time. I've been wanting to post this for years as it's my weirdest personal experience, and this is one of my favorite subreddits. I recently got a computer, and instead of surfing Reddit via my phone, I can finally go here and type it out now on a keyboard. This happened around 2012 or so, and it's still completely clear in my mind as to what happened that day because it was so weird and so strange. I used to work as the only employee besides the owner of a tiny independent holistic pet shop that carried specialty foods and catered to the tight-knit neighborhood it was located in. I had worked there full-time for 3 or 4 years at this point and was very good at my job in that I knew all my regular customers personally. I knew their dogs' diets, their dogs' allergies, and all the details of the diets we carried, as my job was not just cashiering but also nutrition and consulting. And it was a very small family business, and it just had that kind of small business vibe to it. I can still walk that neighborhood to this day and run into previous customers that I used to know when I used to work there. One day the phone rings and a man says he has just moved to the neighborhood and his dog is on the Origin red meat formula. He saw our store listed as a vendor on the Origin website and wants to know if we have a number 30 bag in stock. Now at this point in time, Origin only made the one red formula, and it was very new, and it was about $100 a bag, intended for dogs with severe limiting allergies, and as a result we only kept one bag on hand at any given time. It was common for customers to have to search pretty far and wide to find it because big stores didn't yet carry the brand. I checked the shelf, and I'd tell the customer that we have the bag in stock, and I would hold it for him and say that we also offer the frequent buyer card program that their manufacturer runs. If he wants to set it up, a card would come with it. He replied, awesome. He said he did that through his last store as well, and he said that he would be buying a bit, and he was so happy that he found our store. And I gave him some specific neighborhood directions, as we were a frequent miss along the avenue where we had the store set up. It was kind of tucked away in a corner, and a lot of people had a hard time finding it. Time goes by. Eventually the guy comes in and asks for the Origin red bag, and I show him where it is, and I bring it up front to ring him up. I say something along the lines of, oh, you must have been the guy who called in earlier, to which he confirms yeah, and that it's his first time to our store and that he's going to be a regular from now on. I go, oh, welcome to the neighborhood. Did you find the store okay? He said, oh yes, of course, thank you for the directions. And I hand him the paper of our frequent buyer card so that he could put his information, mainly just his name and phone number, while I got him his change. He hands me the paper back and leaves while saying that he is thrilled to be able to get this so close to home. I fill out the back of this thing with the formula, the size, the date, etc., and include a copy of the receipt, and go pull out the card box where the card will be alphabetized. When I get to this spot in the file, I'm stunned to find an identical card with the same name in the same handwriting already in this spot. Thinking that I must be mistaken, I pull the card out and flip it over, only to find my own handwriting with the same product details written in, identical to the card that I was trying to file. Even the date listed is the same in my own handwriting, and it has a receipt that I now regret not checking the timestamp of. I kind of laughed nervously and filed the card away, thinking that I must have made some kind of a mistake. I spent the rest of that week going over everything, and I realized that, number one, we only ever had one bag of that dog food in stock at a time, ever, so there was no way that I had sold two and just been confused. Two, I had confirmed on multiple points that this man had never been to our store. Three, I likely would have remembered him from an earlier visit if he had been in that day or sometime before. It's not a busy store with a whole bunch of customers that I don't know. I take full responsibility for every person that comes in, and I make sure to get to know them and their pets and everything about them and the ones that they love. Plus, it's only me and the owner. So how could I have missed this guy ever coming in before? By the time I decided to look for the cardigan when I did have some spare time, I had forgotten the customer's name. And I know what you're thinking, how could that possibly happen since I was thinking about this for so long? Well, even though it's not a busy store, there are things I need to get done, and I need to schedule my time properly to make sure that what needs to get done first and what's most important gets done. But by the time I decided to try to find the cardigan, I had forgotten his name. And I know what you're thinking, how could I forget something like that? Well, I try to prioritize my time at the store properly, and I try to spend most of my time being efficient and not looking up things that aren't that important. And although this was really weird, I had other things to do. But if this guy comes in again, I'll be sure to check on this again, and I'll let you know what happens. This happened about 2 years ago. My eldest sister was staying with me and sleeping in the room across the hall. The room my sister was staying in wasn't huge by any means. When you walk in, the light switch was by the door, and it was about 3 steps to the queen-size bed, which took up most of the room. It was about 4 to 5 feet from the end of the bed to the wall, but there was a vanity and some shelving, so there wasn't a lot of floor space, if you know what I mean. We go to bed, and my sister looks very disturbed and shaken the next day. She said she woke up in the middle of the night and got up to go to the bathroom. She stood up and reached out for the wall and the light switch, but there was nothing there. She kept walking and reaching out, but it was dark and there was just nothing. She found the bed again and walked from the end, but the same thing. She said she had walked about 20 or 30 steps in each direction, and still there was just nothing. I have slept in that room many times, and there was a window that lets in the street light, but there was none of that from her description. She had been in pitch darkness. She sat on the bed for a bit since it seemed to be the only thing, freaked out in the dark, and when she tried again she found the wall and lit the switch right away. She slept with the light on the rest of the night. I hadn't heard this happening before to anybody else, or something similar. Has this happened to you before, or to anybody you know? It's like she went from her room to some other place in the world, and she doesn't know how she got back, but thank God that she did. I posted a while back about how my sister woke up and couldn't find any walls. A few months after posting, I read a book about fairy folklore from Britain, Scotland, and Ireland, and something interesting caught my eye. There was a story about a man who fell asleep and he woke up. The room was exceptionally dark. This was before electricity, so probably not surprising, right? But when he got off the bed, he couldn't find it anymore, nor could he find the walls. Like another person who commented on the last thread, he finally got out of it by screaming out loudly for his family. In another story in the book that was right after his story, in the book it seemed to say the same thing, that this was all pixie-related phenomena. A teenager was walking across a field not far from her house, and it just seemed to go on forever and ever and ever. Even though she had been through the area hundreds of times, it was like it was much bigger and longer than it had ever been before. To get out of this situation, a person is supposed to put a piece of clothing on inside out a lot of different times, like your socks. Putting your socks inside out or looking through your legs will get you past this illusion. The girl eventually did one of these things and was said to be freed. Supposedly, this is a sign that one has been pixie-led or glamoured by fairies. Just an interesting alternative theory for a strange situation that many people have experienced. It reminds me a lot of stories I have read on Missing 411 as well. When I read about this, I told my whole family about it and about how to get out of it, just in case one of them ends up in this situation again, like my sister. Another thing, I was talking to my sister again and she shared a detail I had forgot to mention from the day that this happened. When she was wandering around the room for a long time, she eventually ended up touching some kind of a fabric that seemed to be hanging. There was one window in the room without a curtain, hence the weirdness of not seeing the street light through it. And nothing else on the wall was hanging that could have remotely been mistaken for a fabric. She said it was soft and velvety, and it was all she could feel. Nothing hard behind it. No walls, as if she had followed something or was touching a window. It freaked her out, and it was so bad that she went back to searching for space as opposed to that fabric. When the space was back to normal, there was nothing like it in the room that she could have ever mistaken for it. I often wonder what would have happened to her if she had tried to go through that fabric. Where would she have gone? I'm curious if anybody else has experienced this. I was around 16 or 17 years old when I was driving around with my friend. We were on local rural roads, and it was after dark, maybe around 9 p.m., surrounded by fields. I saw something out of the corner of my eye on the passenger side, maybe 15 to 20 feet, out in the field. It was like a dark circle on the ground, and 3 people came out of it, all in separate directions. They didn't crawl up like it was a well. It was like the air pushed them up, and their knees didn't bend, almost like a pop-up book, and they started walking in all directions after that. My friend and I just kind of looked at each other, and we were like, "Did you see that?" No idea what we witnessed. I was afraid to turn around and go back and check out to see what it was, but now I kind of regret that, as I'm curious as to what the hell I saw. I've never seen anything like that before, and I don't know who those people were. I don't really recall what they were wearing or whether or not they were out of place, or I don't remember any of that. It's something that you would categorize as being Fortean, or that would come from the works of somebody like Charles Fort. It still baffles me to this day, and even though I'm curious about what I saw, it was a very chilling experience. So my girlfriend and I were driving through a heavily forested area in Tasmania, in the nation of Australia. There is a cliff wall on our left-hand side and a cliff edge to the right of us. The road is winding and fairly thin, so vehicles need to slow down to a crawl when passing one another. I've noticed a yellow camper van that is approaching us. My girlfriend casually mentions to watch out. We are both watching the van as we slowly approach one another. We are about 20 meters away from it when the curve in the road and the cliff face obscures the van from view. When we pass the corner, the van is gone. It's nowhere to be seen. Both my girlfriend and I look at each other, shocked, and we're both really freaked out. I took a pen from the hire car's glove compartment, and without speaking, I write "yellow camper van" on one of my maps. I then asked my girlfriend to describe what she saw. She described it as a yellow camper van that's vanished, according to her. It just disappeared. That's what I saw as well. And there was nowhere for this van to go. It couldn't have gone off the cliff because of the trees, and we would have seen it anyways. It couldn't have just turned around and sped off because it was only out of view for about 2 seconds, and that was about it. I would have discounted this as a hallucination or imagination, or some kind of a false memory. If I was by myself, I wouldn't have anybody to fall back on, or rely on somebody else to see something with me. But me and my girlfriend both witnessed the exact same thing, which is very odd. I just wanted to share this. I feel confident that we witnessed something very unusual and totally unexplainable. It's weird because I haven't really spoken about this apart from the paranormal forum here on Reddit with my friends or family before, because it's just too weird. Who would believe something as outlandish as this? A few years ago, my girlfriend, her cousin, and I were all hanging out at her house. We decided to walk to a supermarket that was a decent 20 minutes away to get something to drink. It's one road that goes all the way out of her neighborhood. There were no houses on that road except down some side streets. There were 3 older people in front of us. I'd say about maybe 55 or 60. It was 2 boys and a girl. Now, they weren't super far ahead of us. If we walked a little bit faster, we could have caught up to them in a couple of seconds. Both me and my girlfriend watched them go through a doorway or something at the only part of the fence that was chain link. It looked like they had to step into it, like step over the bottom of the gates and duck under the top, even though it was a pretty tall fence. We didn't think anything of it until 10 seconds later when we passed and we looked through the fence, and it was a big grass field and they were nowhere to be seen. I looked for a way in and there was no door. There was no open side of the fence or no holes or anything for them to go through. There was no possible way to get in without jumping over the fence itself. There was no opening at all for these people to go through. For the rest of the day, me and my girlfriend were freaking out. I asked her cousin if she remembers, and he says he didn't see anything, but to this day, it remains a mystery to me and my girlfriend. What happened to those people? Who were they and where did they go? And why did it seem like they were walking through a doorway or an opening that didn't exist? I wonder if they went to some other realm or some other dimension. As crazy as that might sound, that's the only thing that I can think of. I'm going to provide a more in-depth story and explanation first. Last night, my friend, we'll call him George, and I went outside George's apartment complex to pick up our DoorDash order. We ended up getting downstairs and outside early because the app warned us way in advance for his arrival, so we decided to just sit on the bench and have a cigarette until the driver got there. Meanwhile, 2 frat boy looking guys walked into the building talking and laughing while hustling some liquor inside. I briefly made eye contact with one of the guys when a cicada clicked and squawked into the dude's face while walking in, and both me and my friend George had a pretty good laugh at that. After about 1 minute after these guys walked in, a decent amount of time, our driver had arrived with our order, and we gathered our things and then headed inside. As we walked in and up the elevators, which are plain in sight in front of you, I saw on the left elevator that it was about to fully shut, but I saw 2 legs from the boy that I made contact with standing in there with the other guy. George, my friend, quickly pressed the elevator button as soon as it shut to catch the elevator ride with those 2 guys that we saw earlier in that cicada incident. But when it opened, there was nobody there. Now hold up a second. I know what you're probably thinking. Well, the elevator probably just left and another one came right afterwards, which is why nobody was in that other elevator, because the first elevator went up or down. Well, here's what's wrong with that logic and why me and my friend are so freaked out. As soon as we realized that there was no one in the elevator, George and I looked at each other at the same time and just went, "What?" Immediately we're trying to explain this away, using any kind of reasoning possible. There must have been another cart, right? But we were on the ground floor, and there was no other floor below us, or some kind of a garage below our feet. And if their elevator cart had already left, the other elevator to our right would have opened instead of that elevator that we tried to open that had those dudes standing in it. We got into the elevator and didn't press any buttons other than buttons trying to open the elevator door that was behind the cart, and we also wanted to see if there was a garage level door that would open somehow, but after about 10 rapid presses and waiting, there was no garage door below us, and nothing ever happened. That's what's so baffling about this whole situation and why I find it so strange, and me and my friend were both left dumbfounded because we have no way to explain what we saw. There is absolutely no way that one dude or two of them could be standing in that elevator cart 1 second and then, as soon as the door closes in front of them, be gone the next second. That fast. It's impossible for that to happen. So who was it, or what was it that we saw in that elevator? And was it just our minds playing tricks on us? Perhaps if it was only me or my friend, but both of us saw the same thing. So there are multiple witnesses. That's how we can't write it off as just some kind of a hallucination, because why did we hallucinate the same thing? This morning I fed both our dogs in the kitchen as usual. After they finished, they went back into the living room. About 5 minutes later, I called them to go outside to use the bathroom in the backyard. Our larger dog came and I let her out. Our smaller dog is old and hard of hearing, so she didn't come. I closed the door and walked a few feet to the sink to wash dishes. After a couple of minutes, I went to the back door to call the big dog to come back inside. She came trotting over the deck, the way she always does to come back into the house. And lo and behold, there at the far edge of the yard was our small dog, the one I just mentioned. Not some other dog, it was our dog. And if you're a pet owner and have dogs or cats or any kind of a pet, you know your animals when you see them. I was stunned when I saw her out there. How did she get out of the house? I'm certain that she didn't go out with the other dog. I know she didn't. Even if she's a smaller dog, there's no way that I would have missed her. And nobody came into the kitchen while I was out to let the dog go to the backyard. She never walked past me to somehow open the door on her own. But yet there she was, outside, and I have absolutely no explanation for how that happened at all.